Hey, good afternoon, Fight family. Just wanted to contemplate on a few things, contemplate boxing. Just want to contemplate on this past weekend's fights. Wanted to reflect a little bit. Past weekend was very exciting. DAZN put on, of course, the Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz main event card. And everybody knows what happens. If you don't know what has happened just yet, just Google Anthony Joshua. Of course, Andy Ruiz shocked the entire world by stopping Anthony Joshua. Nobody really expected it. There were a lot of fighters and I think a lot of commentators and different professionals that did state, hey, you can't underestimate Andy Ruiz, but very, very few people were actually choosing Andy Ruiz to pull off the upset and win, much less stop Anthony Joshua. It was an amazing performance by Andy Ruiz. He got knocked down in the third round, came back, dropped Anthony Joshua in the same round, and just pretty much controlled things from there. Then was able to stop him later on. Now, what I do want to contemplate on is just some thoughts about the future of the heavyweight division. Specifically, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and my friend, he doesn't follow boxing nearly as closely as I do or some of my other friends and compatriots. However, what he stated was he was really disappointed because he was really looking forward to a quote-unquote super fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. And I had to remind him, I said, hey, man, while this does give that particular fight a setback, it does cause setbacks for that fight, it does change certain things about that fight, it doesn't mean absolutely that fight cannot happen. We have to remember, back during a previous heavyweight era, you take a look at somebody like Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis at one time had a lot of fights on the table for him, and then he gets knocked out by Oliver McCall. Devastating knockout. Builds himself back up. Once again, has a lot of different fights on the table for him, but then gets knocked out by Hasim Rahman. Both devastating knockout losses, but Lennox Lewis went on to have an all-time great career, went on to have big fights against the likes of Evander Holyfield, and then a super fight against Mike Tyson that broke many records. Excuse me. So, at this particular moment, I'm not going to say that super fights and huge fights can't happen for Anthony Joshua. It's definitely going to depend on how and if he rebuilds himself. You take a look outside of the heavyweight division. You had somebody like Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao had two knockout losses early in his career, but he went on to have phenomenal fights against the likes of Eric Morales, Marco Antonio Barrera, Juan Manuel Marquez. Huge fight against Oscar De La Hoya. Big fight against Ricky Hatton. And then he got knocked out in devastating fashion, literally put to sleep, against Juan Manuel Marquez in their fourth meeting, but still had the super fight against Floyd Mayweather Jr., which broke all records. So it's not impossible. With that being said, when you use the examples of Manny Pacquiao and Lennox Lewis, we are talking about all-time greats. It is easier to kind of take a look in retrospect at their careers and their past fights and things that happened in their past. Anthony Joshua is in a present generation, so it remains to be seen whether or not he will be an all-time great in his division or just an all-time great period across divisions. But again, like I said, that's going to heavily depend on how he rebuilds himself. With that said, I don't want to take shine away from Andy Ruiz, because Andy Ruiz, again, like I said, put on a phenomenal performance. He showed that it doesn't really matter what you look like so much. Your physique does not always determine your physical performance. So I saw a lot of memes. Some people were, doing memes. Said that he looked like Gabriel Iglesias. saw memes of other things and whatnot, kind of poking fun at Andy Ruiz, but Andy Ruiz, he proved all of us wrong. And that's one of the things I do love about this sport. I do like when fighters often prove me wrong, because in this particular case especially, it changes the storyline of the landscape of a division. And you just never know what's going to happen after that. It brings up a lot of questions that we really yearn for answers for. So a lot of different individuals also pointed out that one of the other things that occurred with Anthony Joshua's loss is that Andy Ruiz is a fighter under the PBC brand. Now, I don't get involved in any of the politics between Al Heyman and Eddie Hearn and Bob Arum, or Al Heyman versus all the rest of the world. When it comes to those politics, for the most part, I don't really care about it. Sometimes those politics get in the way of the fights that I really want to see, and I get a little bit annoyed with it. But the truth of the matter is this. Andy Ruiz does fight under the PBC brand, as does Deontay Wilder. All of the titles, with the exception of the lineal heavyweight title, are under the PBC brand. And there are many out there that really don't care much or even see the lineal title as something legitimate. And you have individuals that will argue back and forth. I do value the lineal title myself because there is a long and honorable history behind it. So I do value it. A lot of people don't. But with that being said, a fight between Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz more than likely will be easier to negotiate, especially since Andy Ruiz, man, he just, he got that great opportunity against Anthony Joshua, and he is looking, for a Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury fight as well. So, with them being in the same camps, that's usually how promotions and negotiations and advising go. It's just going to be easier to negotiate that, So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. It'll be interesting to see if Andy Ruiz can upset the apple cart 3 times in a row. Because, of course, you're going to have the Anthony Joshua rematch. And then if he goes on somewhere down the line to fight Deontay Wilder, I know a lot of people, are going to say Deontay Wilder is definitely the favorite. At this point, right now, I'll even say Deontay Wilder is the favorite against Andy Ruiz. But if he can upset the world again, wow, won't that be a story?